They said humans don't exist, but legends have a way of waiting. The nebular archives floated in the silent dark, a library carved from a dying moon, wrapped in lightless metal and memory. Every known civilization had left its mark here: star maps, relics, songs, and bones. Lyra Venn, chief archivist of the outer sectors, adjusted the lens over her single blue eye. The hollow feed shimmered with static, another corrupted data core from the pre-Exodus era. Terrans, the index read. She sighed. Again. The word carried weight, like dust that refused to settle. Every few cycles, some outer world pilgrim brought tales of Terrans, beings of myth, fleshborn from a green world that once circled a yellow sun. Supposedly they built empires, reached the stars, then vanished in an event called the Silence. To Lyra, it was all folklore, no more credible than the Saarine myths of gods who shaped comets with their hands. She dictated softly into her recorder. Entry 6729. Terran artifacts. Origin disputed. Probability of authenticity negligible. Her assistant, a silicate being named Koro, pulsed amber. Archivist Venn, you speak of myths as though they irritate you. They do, she said, folding her arms. The galaxy clings to ghost. I prefer facts. Koro's crystals flickered. Facts are only ghosts with proof. Lyra almost smiled. Outside the archive's observation dome, the void shimmered, not with light, but with the restless current of foldspace. Her sensors picked up distortions daily, ship drives, wormholes, gravitational echoes. But this one lingered longer than usual. A pulse, faint, rhythmic. She leaned in. Koro, isolate that signal. The machine obeyed, light flickering through 1,000 data streams. A moment later, a pattern resolved. 3 tones. Pause. 2 tones. Pause. 3 tones again. Lyra frowned. That's patterned, intentional, Koro confirmed. Encoded transmission. Low-frequency burst. Not in Republic registry. Source? Outer grid. Deep void beyond Sector Theta 4. Estimated distance 2.7 light-years. The pulse repeated. And again. She adjusted the frequency, eyes narrowing. The waveform carried something beneath, the modulation, faint and erratic, almost like voice. She enhanced the feed. A broken whisper formed in the static. UNS Atlas, request. Coordinates. Humanity, Lyra froze. Her second heart stuttered. Repeat that, she said. The signal crackled again, warped by distance and time. UNS Atlas. This is Captain Reese Hale. To any receiving station. We are home. Home. The word hung in the air like gravity itself. For several breaths, Lyra didn't move. Her pulse thundered in her skull. Then training returned. She muted the feed and leaned back, staring through the viewport into the starlit void. Impossible, she whispered. Humans vanished 4 centuries ago. Koro tilted his crystalline core. Yet the signal carries human phonetics. Terran standard. If false, it is a precise forgery. No one has used Terran standard in recorded history. Not even the archives preserve a full dialect sample. Then, Koro said, perhaps the myth remembers itself. She spent the next 5 hours verifying. Every line of code, every echo, every burst interval. Nothing fit Republic encryption. The energy signature came from an engine type no longer listed in the galactic registry. Cold dread sank in her gut. Dread and something else. Wonder. When she finally opened her comms link to High Archive Command, her voice was steady, though her mind swam. This is Chief Archivist Venn, requesting verification of an unregistered deep space transmission. Possible Terran origin. Static filled the line for a long, cold minute. Then an old voice replied, Archivist, delete the signal and classify it under mythological anomalies. Do not pursue, her jaw clenched. Director, this is real data. The modulation matches historical Terran patterns. Do not pursue. The comms snapped off. Lyra stared at the black glass, anger flaring beneath her professionalism. They always buried inconvenient truths. The New Republic prided itself on enlightenment, but history was just as political as power. She turned to Koro. Prepare the shuttle. We're tracing it. Koro hesitated. The signal comes from the dead expanse. That region is uncharted? No fold lanes, no return guarantee. Lyra smirked faintly. Every discovery worth making starts with that warning. The shuttle Asterion detached from the moon's shadow, its silver hull glinting under faint starlight. Inside the cockpit, Lyra monitored fold coordinates. The signal pulsed again, clearer now. A beacon calling across centuries. Koro spoke softly. "Archivist, may I ask, why risk your life for a myth?" Lyra's hands paused over the console. "Because myths are the only things that ever made us look up." As they entered foldspace, the stars elongated into lines of liquid gold. The ship groaned, an animal sound like something ancient awakening. Time stretched, then snapped. They emerged in the dark, a place without suns, without sound. Just endless night and drifting debris, fragments of ships, derelict colonies, shattered satellites, and at the center of it, something vast, a shape half buried in nebular dust kilometers long, casting shadows even in the absence of light. Lyra whispered. "Magnify." The screen resolved the hull markings, faded, scarred, but unmistakable. UNS Atlas, her breath caught. Koro whispered. "Designation matches Terran vessel registry. Year 2439. Confirmed extinct." The hull stirred, faint blue lights flickering along its spine, like a heartbeat restarting after centuries. Then a voice. Warm and unmistakably human. "Unknown vessel detected. Identify yourself. This is Captain Rhys Hale of the United Nations ship Atlas." Lyra stared at the comm screen. The legends were true. Humanity had returned from the dark. She swallowed, her voice trembling. "This is Archivist Lyra Venn of the New Republic. You're supposed to be extinct," the voice chuckled softly. "Extinct? No, Archivist. We were just delayed." Outside the viewport, the Dreadnought turned, engines flaring like the birth of a small sun. Its light washed over the ruins of forgotten worlds, burning away centuries of disbelief. Lyra felt tears sting her eyes. She didn't know why. Perhaps it was the sheer weight of history made flesh again. Or perhaps something deeper, something she didn't have a word for. Koro whispered, "How could they have survived the silence?" Lyra exhaled. Maybe. Someone wanted them to. She glanced at the stars, faint prayers flickering unbidden in her mind. Prayers she hadn't said since childhood. Maybe myths don't die, she thought. Maybe they wait for the right moment to come home. The Dreadnought awakens, the Republic panics, and the galaxy must decide if the return of humanity means salvation or judgment. When the silence ended, it didn't whisper, it thundered. The UNS Atlas hung motionless, in the void like a ghost rediscovering its flesh, its hull, scored by centuries of radiation and micrometeorite. Storms still bore the ancient blue insignia of the Terran fleet. Across its surface, repair drones flickered to life, brushing away the dust of forgotten epochs. Inside her shuttle, Lyra Venn couldn't breathe. The Dreadnought wasn't dead, it was waking up. "Captain Hale," she said into the comm. "The galaxy hasn't heard a human voice in 400 years. Where have you been?" The channel crackled, then came the reply, low, measured, human. "Foldspace malfunction. We were lost between real space layers for what felt like days." Lyra's eyes widened. "Days? Temporal drift," Hale continued. "Our clocks say 2 weeks. Yours say 4 centuries. Guess time had its own plans." Koro, ever literal, processed it instantly. "A relativistic anomaly. Statistically impossible," Lyra whispered. "And yet here they are." The Atlas filled the viewport, so vast it blotted out the stars. Its engines pulsed like a living heart, ancient reactors stirring from millennia of slumber. Inside that ship were humans. Real breathing myth made manifest. She opened a data link. The Dreadnought's transmission codes were decades obsolete, yet the pattern, clean, deliberate, elegant, spoke of an engineering culture that treated technology not as machinery, but as art. Koro murmured. "Their systems are self-healing, organic matrices interfaced with neural conduits. Even we have not reached this sophistication." Lyra's throat tightened. "They built this before the silence?" "Yes," Koro answered, "and it still endures. Like belief." Then a low hum filled her cockpit. The Atlas was scanning her. Deep-wave telemetry, full-spectrum analysis. "Archivist Venn," Hale's voice said. "You're from the Republic, you said? What became of Earth?" Lyra hesitated. No one had ever asked her that question aloud. "Earth," she whispered, "is legend. Its coordinates were lost after the Exodus. Humanity, you, vanished. The Republic rose from the ashes of your colonies. Silence. Then soft laughter tinged with disbelief. So we became the myth. She smiled faintly. Yes. The children of your children built a civilization on your memory, but no one ever believed you'd return. You should have known better, Hale said. His tone shifted, stronger now, like a soldier remembering his purpose. Humans don't vanish. We adapt. The Dreadnought moved closer like a mountain drifting through mist. Then, without warning, 100 smaller lights ignited along its hull, tiny vessels detaching and forming escort wings. The Atlas wasn't just a ship. It was a fleet unto itself. Lyra's scanners went wild. Energy readings off the scale. Captain Hale, those vessels, are they manned? Automated, Hale replied. Defense swarm protocols. Foldspace can be unpredictable. We learned not to travel alone. On the archive moon, chaos erupted. Across the Republic's neural grid, emergency alerts cascaded. Every sensor array, every deep space relay, every intelligence bureau screamed the same warning. Unknown Dreadnought-class vessel, human origin, confirmed. Council chambers filled with fear. High Chancellor Myrick stood before the holotable, his tendrils shaking. Humans were myths. If they have returned, what power do they bring with them? A dozen voices shouted over one another, some calling for contact, others for immediate defense mobilization. History remembers them as conquerors. One delegate hissed. They colonized half the Orion Arm? History also remembers them as saviors, another argued. Without humans, there would be no republic. The Chancellor slammed his staff. Silence. Prepare a diplomatic fleet, and gods help us. Do not provoke them. Meanwhile, in the cold dark, Lyra's shuttle glided toward the Atlas's massive docking bay. Her heart thudded with a mix of fear and awe. The docking lights aligned, magnetic clamps engaged. The airlock hissed open, and there, standing in the threshold, was a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his uniform faded but immaculate. His eyes, gray, sharp, human, held the weight of time itself. His face bore the faint shimmer of cryoscar lines. A small emblem was etched over his chest plate, UNS Atlas. Captain Reese Hale Lyra stepped forward slowly, voice trembling. You're real, he smiled faintly. Last I checked, she took in every detail. The faint stubble, the scuffed boots, the calm command in his stance. This wasn't a ghost or a god. This was a man, a living echo of humanity's forgotten glory. Behind him, she glimpsed the ship's corridor, sterile steel corridors intertwined with living vines of biometal circuitry. A faint hum echoed through the deck like a heartbeat. This ship, she said softly. It's alive. Partly, Hale replied. We learned from nature, not just machines. A machine that heals itself lasts longer than one that waits for repair. He looked past her at the stars, eyes distant. Funny thing about being lost in the dark, archivist. It makes you start talking to the silence, praying even when you don't believe you do. She hesitated. Praying to whom? He shrugged. Didn't matter, just someone. Something. Because out there, when every system fails and time itself forgets you, you either believe you'll make it home, or you die trying. She studied him for a long moment. And you made it home, he smiled softly. Maybe someone wanted us to. Lyra's recorder flickered to life. Captain Hale, the galaxy will want answers. How you survived. Why you returned, he sighed. I'm not sure we chose to. The fold pulled us back violently. Whatever kept us alive in there, it wasn't physics. He walked down the corridor, gesturing for her to follow. Our scientists tried to measure it, name it, dissect it. But deep down, every man and woman aboard knew the same truth. We were meant to come back. The ship's bridge opened before them, a cathedral of light and glass. Stars shimmered across the panoramic viewport, and in the center stood a circular dais surrounded by holographic constellations. Crew members, human men and women, moved with disciplined precision, their uniforms marked with patches of faded flags, United Nations, Mars Coalition, Lunar Command. Lyra's breath caught. So many faces, different shades, different worlds, but all unmistakably human. Your people, she whispered. They survived in foldspace for centuries? Hale nodded. We had help. The Atlas wasn't just a ship, it was a seed. It grew, adapted, evolved with us. We stopped aging after the first drift cycle. It kept us alive, waiting for something. Waiting for what? Hale turned toward the viewport. Beyond the stars, a faint blue shimmer rippled like a curtain of light separating two realities. "That," he said. "Whatever's coming through." Alarms flared, a ripple spread through the void, bending light, space, and reason. The Atlas's sensors screamed with radiation warnings. Koro's voice crackled over Lyra's comms. "Archivist!" I detect multiple energy signatures forming behind the Dreadnought. "Unknown origin." Hale snapped commands. "Shields up." "Battle stations." Lyra steadied herself against a railing as the bridge vibrated. Outside, the shimmer deepened and shapes emerged, sleek obsidian ships, their hulls pulsing with crimson veins. Koro's analysis came in broken bursts. Not Republic. Not in any known registry. "Energy profile, hostile." Hale's jaw hardened. "Of course. The void never gives gifts without teeth." He looked at Lyra. "Archivist Ven, you might want to see what humanity's been fighting all this time." She stared at him. "You mean," he nodded grimly. "We weren't alone in the dark. The first volley struck. The Atlas absorbed it like thunder meeting steel. Counterfire lit the void, dazzling and terrifying in equal measure. Through it all, Lyra felt a strange calm settle over her. The fear that had ruled the galaxy for centuries, the disbelief, the doubt, was burning away in the light of a truth undeniable. Humans were real, and they were fighting for home. As plasma fire tore across the black, Lyra whispered to herself, "They said humans don't exist." The Dreadnought roared back, cannons blazing like dawn breaking through apocalypse. Then they were wrong. The Atlas defends the galaxy from the unseen enemy that haunted humanity's exile. As the Republic struggles to comprehend, one question echoes across every world. What did the humans bring back with them? Sometimes the war doesn't follow you home. It waits for you to return. The stars were no longer silent. They screamed. The void erupted in violence as alien vessels, sleek, black, and burning with crimson energy, swarmed the Dreadnought like a tide of shadows. The UNS Atlas moved with impossible grace for a ship its size, engines pulsing like living hearts, guns roaring like divine thunder. On the bridge, Captain Reese Hale stood firm, every command precise and controlled. "Target lead vessel. Fire on my mark." Energy arced from the Dreadnought's spinal cannons, blinding white beams that tore through the dark, reducing the first enemy cruiser to molten vapor. A dozen more followed, weaving and striking in synchronized formation. Lyra Ven gripped a console rail, eyes wide. "Their maneuvering is beyond Republic standards. Those ships think." "They're not ships," Hale said grimly. "They're organisms. The enemy doesn't build fleets. It breeds them." She turned sharply. "You mean," he nodded. "They're called the Vorgel, the darkness we met in foldspace. Predators that feed on consciousness itself." The bridge trembled as plasma bolts struck their shields. The Atlas's living armor pulsed in response, redistributing the energy through glowing tendrils that ran along the walls. Every impact sounded like the heartbeat of a titan. "Shields at 76%, shouted Lieutenant Rao. "Deploy kinetic counterfire, full broadside pattern delta," Hale commanded. The Dreadnought twisted, its flanks opening to unleash thousands of self-guided projectiles, tiny flashes of light that carved trails through the void. Each round hit with surgical precision. The enemy lines fractured, their crimson glow flickering like dying embers. Lyra's pulse hammered. "How are you fighting this? No Republic vessel could survive this kind of assault." Hale looked at her, his gray eyes calm. "Because we don't just fight to survive, Archivist. We fight to return home. That changes what you're willing to endure." Across the void, the Atlas's fleet, autonomous drones, escort frigates, and railgun satellites, formed a perfect sphere around their flagship. It was not a formation born of logic, but of instinct. Every move felt alive. Lyra couldn't help but whisper, "It's like your fleet knows what you'll order before you say it." A faint smile crossed Hale's face. "It does. Neural sync. Every human aboard is linked to the Atlas through the Dreamline system. Thought becomes command. Fear becomes motion. Unity becomes strength." She blinked, awed. "You turned yourselves into one mind." "No," he corrected softly. "One will." Back in the Republic capital, Chaos spread through every channel. News feeds exploded across star systems. Terran Dreadnought engages unknown hostiles beyond dead expanse. First contact or first war? Are the humans protectors or the threat? High Chancellor Merrick slammed his hand on the table. Deploy observation fleets. No one engages without my command, an advisor whispered, trembling. Sir, what if the Terrans win? The Chancellor paused. The room fell silent. He didn't answer. On the Atlas, alarm subsided. The final Vorgel cruiser disintegrated in a blinding flare. Silence returned, thin, fragile, and filled with the scent of ozone and victory. Lyra exhaled shakily. They're retreating. Hale's expression darkened. No, they're regrouping. They always do. He walked toward the viewport, eyes lost in the shimmering blue veil beyond. They followed us out of foldspace. We didn't just come home. We brought them with us. The words chilled her to the bone. You mean the Republic is next? He finished quietly. His hand tightened into a fist. The Vorgel learned to feed on civilizations. They consume energy, memory, emotion, everything that makes a species alive. And now, after 4 centuries of chasing us through the dark, they've found new prey. Lyra's voice broke. Then why return? Why risk bringing them here? He looked at her, eyes hard but not unkind. Because running isn't living. Humanity spent 4 centuries in a cage of stars. We survived because we refused to die hiding. His voice softened. Sometimes survival isn't enough. Sometimes you come back to fight for the ones who don't even know they're in danger. Lyra stared at him, this impossible man, standing against extinction as though defiance were an instinct. For the first time, she understood the legends, the tales of Terrans who fought hopeless wars and somehow won, who wept and bled and prayed and refused to surrender. No wonder the galaxy turned them into myth. It wasn't that humanity was gone. It was that the rest of the stars couldn't bear to believe they were real. Later, she stood alone in the ship's observation deck. Outside, fragments of destroyed, Vorgel ships drifted through the dark, glowing faintly like embers. Her reflection shimmered against the glass, pale and silent. In the distance, the Atlas rotated slowly, its lights flickering with a rhythm that felt almost like breathing. She whispered softly, "Maybe someone really did want you to live." Captain Hale's voice came from behind her. "We thought the same out there in the fold. Every time we should have died, something impossible happened. A power surge, a shift in gravity, a path that shouldn't exist." He joined her at the window. "Call it physics, call it chance, or call it toward faith. But I stopped believing in coincidence a long time ago." She turned toward him, voice barely audible. "You believe in something higher?" He smiled faintly. "After 4 centuries in a place where time forgets your name?" "Yeah." You start talking to the silence, and sometimes it answers. A tremor ran through the hull. The Atlas's sensors flared to life again. Koro's voice echoed over comms. "Captain Hale, multiple fold rifts opening, hundreds, no, thousands, across the sector." Hale's eyes narrowed. "They're coming." "Who?" Lyra asked, though she already knew. "The Vorgel," he said. "The war we fought in the dark has found the light." He turned to her. "Archivist, you need to warn your Republic. Tell them humanity didn't return for conquest. We came back to finish what the darkness started." She stared at him, the weight of destiny pressing on her chest. "And if they don't believe me?" He gave a grim smile. "Then we'll have to remind them why humans became legend in the first place." Outside, the stars began to twist, each point of light bending into swirling gateways. From them poured the endless red glare of the Vorgel horde. The void itself seemed to bleed. Lyra watched in stunned silence as the Atlas moved to meet them, alone, unwavering. She whispered, "You can't fight them all." Captain Hale's voice carried across the comms, steady, resolute, human. "Watch us." The Dreadnought ignited its core. Blue light radiated across the dark, forming a sphere of pure energy. The Atlas charged forward, guns blazing, its engines roaring with the fury of a world that refused extinction. And across the galaxy, Billions watched in awe as myth became reality. For the first time in history, the stars whispered one truth. Humanity had come home, and they were fighting for everyone. As the Atlas holds the line, the Republic debates whether humanity's return is salvation or doom, and Lyra Ven must choose which truth she'll defend, the safety of the known or the courage of the forgotten. The truth doesn't need believers. It only needs to be seen. The storm of war raged unseen across the edges of the galaxy. For most citizens of the New Republic, the battle near the dead expanse was a distant rumor, a flicker of static across the HoloNet. But for those in the capital of Velthar Prime, it was a crisis that could rewrite the meaning of history itself. Inside the Grand Chamber of Concord, light cascaded through crystalline walls. Delegates from 57 worlds gathered in spirals of levitating seats, their holographic sigils glowing above them like small suns. At the center, High Chancellor Merrick stood before the planetary holotable, his tendrils coiling in agitation. The image above it showed a single massive ship, human-made, locked in combat with hundreds of crimson entities. "This," he declared, "is what your myths have brought upon us." His voice echoed through the dome, each word amplified by the chamber's acoustic field. 400 years of peace. And now, beasts from foldspace unleashed by the return of humans. Are we to celebrate them as saviors or condemn them as the spark that lights our extinction? Murmurs filled the air. Councillor Rethan of the Outer Colonies raised his voice. Without them, the Vorgel would still be waiting beyond our sight. You should be thanking them. Another, a gray-scaled diplomat from the Serene Systems, hissed, "Thank them? They brought the darkness here. Perhaps this Atlas is a weapon unleashed by their kind." Myrick's eyes narrowed. Weapons of myth, now reality. Tell me, how do you govern a legend? You can't predict it. You can't control it. On the far end of the chamber, a comm link shimmered to life. Archivist Lyra Ven, face pale, voice steady. "High Chancellor, with respect, control is not the issue. Understanding is," Merrick folded his hands. "Ah, the myth hunter herself returns. Speak, Archivist. You stood aboard this Terran Dreadnought, did you not?" Lyra nodded. "I did. And you brought their war to our border." Her jaw tightened. "No, Chancellor. Their war followed them, and if they hadn't intervened, it would have reached us without warning." He sneered softly. "So now you defend them?" "I've seen them," she said quietly. "They bleed, they fear. But they fight not for conquest, but because something in them refuses to let the dark win." She paused, the silence pressing down like gravity. "You call them a myth. But perhaps they're what our myths were trying to remember." The council murmured, uneasy. Merrick's gaze softened, just slightly. "Do they believe they're heroes, Archivist Ven?" Lyra hesitated. "No. They believe they're responsible." Across the room, a diplomat from the Draxian clans rose, clicking his talons. "This changes everything. If humans survived the silence, then what else did? What technologies? What weapons?" "Exactly," said Merrick. "A civilization capable of returning from beyond time itself. What would stop them from claiming dominion again?" Lyra's voice rose above the din. "You fear them because you see in them what you've forgotten in yourselves, conviction." The room fell still. Merrick studied her for a long time. "Conviction built empires, yes. But it also burned worlds," she met his gaze unwavering. "And yet without it, nothing worth saving ever survives." That night, across the city spires of Velthar Prime, the holoscreens replayed fragments of the Atlas's battle footage. Grainy, luminous, half-mythical, citizens gathered in plazas, watching in silence as a single Terran Dreadnought fought 1,000 nightmares alone. Children stared, eyes wide. Elders whispered prayers from faiths long forgotten. And somewhere in the crowd, someone murmured, "They came back. For us?" Meanwhile, in orbit above the capital, the Atlas's signal flickered into life. Lyra stood aboard the shuttle docked to its flank, transmitting data to the Republic relay. Captain Hale appeared beside her, his presence steady as the stars. "Your leaders don't trust easily," he said. "They trust patterns," she replied. "You don't fit any," he smiled faintly. "We never did." She turned to him. "They think you brought the Vorgel here." He nodded slowly. "They're right." That made her look up, startled. "You admit it?" "Of course," he said. "But they misunderstand the why." He stepped closer to the viewport. the blue-white glow of the Atlas reflected in his eyes. We didn't bring them here to destroy the Republic. We brought them here to end them once and for all. Where we came from, there's nothing left to protect. Here there still is. He looked tired then, a man who had carried centuries on his back. We've seen what happens when people stop believing in something greater than survival. It turns them into ghosts before they die. Lyra studied him. And what do you believe in, Captain? He was quiet for a long time. Then softly, that we were meant to come back. That some things, faith, courage, love, don't vanish with time. They wait, and when they're needed most, they rise again. Far below in the capital's temple district, the old bells rang. Metal relics from a forgotten age. No one remembered what they once signified. But tonight their echoes filled the air, resonating through the crystal towers. Some said it was coincidence. Others whispered it was an omen. Lyra, listening through the viewport, simply smiled. You see? Even the city remembers. Back in the council chamber, Chancellor Merrick sat alone, watching the same footage everyone else did. The human dreadnought blazing through the dark like a living star. He whispered to himself. Extinct creatures don't fight like that. He leaned back, the reflection of the Atlas glowing in his glassy eyes. Maybe we buried the wrong myths. In the quiet that followed, the Atlas hovered above the Republic's heart world, surrounded by fleets that didn't know whether to salute or aim. Lyra stood beside Hale on the observation deck. They're afraid of you, he nodded. Good, fear's honest. It's a start. And if they decide you're a threat, he smiled, gaze distant, then I'll show them what it means to be human. Outside, the Atlas drifted through the stars like a silent guardian. Its engines hummed, not of war, but of something older, deeper, something watching, waiting. Lyra watched Hale's reflection in the glass and found herself whispering, Maybe we needed you to remember what we were capable of. He turned, eyes steady. No, archivist. You never forgot. You just stopped believing. Far beyond the system. The fold shimmered again, red fissures splitting the dark. The Vorgel were coming. And for the first time in 4 centuries, the galaxy would have to decide whether to stand with humanity or against them. The Republic faces the unthinkable, alliance with the Terrans. As the Vorgel invasion begins, humanity teaches the galaxy the oldest lesson in the stars. Hope is not found. It's forged. In the void, courage burns brightest when all other lights die. The Vorgel came like a storm of red glass and void light. The first incursion broke through the Helion Gate Nebula, a gaping wound of warped space and plasma tides. Thousands of ships, organic and silent, poured through like locusts feeding on the fabric of reality itself. Within minutes, the outer colonies began broadcasting distress signals. Within an hour, silence. Within 2, only static. On the Atlas, alarms flared. The Dreadnought's ancient systems, built by Terran engineers long dead, awoke with machine precision. Captain Hale stood on the command bridge, eyes locked on the unfolding carnage. Around him, the crew, humans and the few alien observers who dared remain, worked with sharp, almost sacred discipline. Targeting matrix online. Power to spinal rail, said Lieutenant Serrano, her voice clipped. Helion Gate feed stable. Updating threat map, called another. Every command echoed through the metallic corridors like heartbeat pulses. Lyra Venn stood near the observation console, unable to tear her gaze from the holomap. Thousands of crimson signatures bloomed, each a living weapon, a predator ship capable of folding reality around itself. She whispered, There are too many. Hale didn't turn. There always are. He looked calm, but beneath that calm was something burning, ancient, and relentless. A chime interrupted them. A transmission from the Republic High Command blinked onto the holo. Chancellor Merrick appeared, his face drawn, his voice sharp. Captain Hale, the Senate authorizes temporary coordination between your vessel and the Republic fleet. But understand this, we're not your soldiers. Hale gave a small, humorless smile. Wouldn't dream of it. Merrick leaned closer. You will, however, defend Helion Gate. If it collapses, the Vorgel will reach our core systems within days. Hale nodded. We'll hold it. Lyra's eyes flicked toward him. Against that? He turned to her. Archivist, yeah, we've held worse. Minutes later, space unfolded into war. The Atlas surged forward, its engines flaring blue-white, thrumming with controlled fury. From its dorsal banks, the ancient Terran rail cannons ignited, firing tungsten slugs the size of transport pods. Each impact tore through Vorgal hulls with searing precision, fragments scattering like burning shards of night. The Republic fleet followed behind, sleek silver vessels firing plasma arcs and magnet bursts, coordinated by the Atlas's targeting AI. For a brief, impossible moment, the line held. Then came the screamers. 10 massive Vorgal warforms, each larger than a city, emerged from the fold, their hulls glistening like obsidian spines. The sound of their arrival wasn't heard, but felt, vibrations in the soul, as if reality itself flinched. Republic ships faltered, comms breaking, pilots panicked. One cruiser detonated without warning, its AI corrupted mid-command. "Signal degradation rising," Serrano shouted. "They're infecting the net." Hale's voice cut through the chaos. "Shut them out. Go analog." The crew obeyed instantly, manual controls flicking to life, guidance by instinct and will. Lyra blinked. "Analog? You can't coordinate a fleet that way." Hale smirked. "Watch us." The Atlas roared. Every system went semi-manual. Gunner, crews firing by visual mark, navigators reading magnetic drift, engineers timing reactor pulses by rhythm, not code. For a moment, the Terrans fought like ghosts of a forgotten war. Humans against monsters beyond reason, trusting in nothing but skill, memory, and each other. Even the Republic captains began to follow suit. Without AIs, without automation, they leaned on human intuition, something alien to them yet frighteningly effective. Lyra's heart pounded. She looked at the battle around them, Republic ships weaving with a strange, uncalculated grace. It was messy, imperfect, but alive. "They're adapting," she whispered. Hale didn't answer. His eyes glowed with reflected explosions, voice low. "They're remembering." A massive tremor shook the Atlas as one of the screamers latched onto its hull, claws digging into alloy older than the Republic itself. Warning klaxons blared. Serrano screamed, "Hull breach imminent!" Hale grabbed the intercom. "All decks brace for close engagement." Then, in a move that defied every tactical protocol, he ordered, "Bring us closer. I want that thing's face on my viewport." The Atlas tilted, thrusters burning red-hot as it drove itself into the creature's mass. Mechanical claws extended from its hull, locking onto the Vorgal warform. Energy rippled between them. Chaos versus creation, machine versus nightmare. Inside, the crew felt the deck plates quake. Lyra stumbled, catching herself on the console. "You're going to ram it?" Hale grinned. Feral, human. Not ram, anchor. In the engineering bay, power conduits glowed brighter than regulation allowed. A technician crossed herself before flipping the manual override. "God help us," she murmured. The energy spike surged, and the Atlas fired its spinal rail point blank. The slug tore through both hulls. The Vorgal warform shrieked in silence, fracturing into shards of red and void light. The shockwave hurled the dreadnought backward, but the creature disintegrated. The command bridge shook violently. Sparks rained. Oxygen levels dropped. Lyra gasped for breath. "You killed it." Hale steadied himself against the console, smoke curling from his sleeve. "Correction," he rasped. "We reminded it what dying feels like." Elsewhere in the system, the Republic fleet rallied around the human dreadnought. Seeing it still alive, still fighting, ignited something primal in every species watching. Pilots shouted across comms, "Atlas is still holding." Another cried, "The humans are leading the charge." Ships reformed lines, weapons synchronized. For the first time, the Republic fought not out of fear, but belief. Hours later, when the last of the Vorgal retreated back through the fold, the battlefield hung silent. Hundreds of wrecks floated like frozen tombs, but the Atlas remained, scarred, smoking, alive. Lyra stared at the stars beyond the viewport, voice trembling. "You did it," You actually did it. Hale didn't look proud, just thoughtful. We bought time. Time for what? He turned slowly toward her. For you to decide what you believe in. She frowned. Meaning? He gestured toward the stars. We can fight monsters. We can build weapons. But none of that matters if no one remembers why we fight. He looked at his scarred hands, whispering almost to himself. Survival without purpose is just waiting to die. The silence after battle was immense. Crew members moved quietly, repairing systems, tending to the wounded. One young ensign knelt beside a shattered console, clutching a small metallic pendant, a human cross. Lyra noticed, curious. You're praying? The ensign looked up, eyes tired but calm. Not praying for victory, ma'am, just saying thanks. For what? He smiled faintly. For another sunrise. Someone clearly wants us to see it. Lyra's throat tightened. Something in her heart shifted. Later, Hale stood alone on the observation deck. The stars stretched endless before him, cold, beautiful, ancient. He whispered softly, If you're still out there, watching, we came back. Just like you wanted. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, from the distance, the dying light of the Helion Gate shimmered, like a heartbeat in the dark. The galaxy had seen many wars, but this was the first time it saw faith weaponized as courage. The first time the Republic fought not for territory but for existence, and at the heart of it all stood one Terran Dreadnought, battered but unbroken, teaching a galaxy what it had forgotten. Hope isn't a resource. It's an act of defiance. Lyra discovers a fragment of Earth's memory hidden within the Atlas. As the Republic begins to fracture under fear and awe, one question spreads across the stars. If humanity has returned, can God follow? The past doesn't die. It waits for someone brave enough to remember. The Battle of Helion Gate was over, but victory had never felt so heavy. Across the Republic, the stars burned quieter. Wreckage floated through the void, hulls of the fallen reflecting faint light from distant suns. Every world tuned in to the broadcast, the footage of a Terran Dreadnought standing defiant against extinction. To some, it was salvation. To others, it was a warning. Aboard the UNS Atlas, silence reigned. Hull fractures had been sealed. Power systems were stabilizing. But deep in the core of the ship, beyond the crew, quarters and armories, there was a place sealed even from Hale himself. The memorial deck. Only one person had been granted clearance. Lyra. Then, she walked through the ancient corridor, boots echoing on metal that predated her civilization. The air here was still, colder somehow, along the walls. Hollow panels flickered, millions of them, each displaying names, crew of the UNS Erebus, victims of the Orion, silence, colonists of Vega Outpost. 3, every step she took illuminated another. Row, names stretching into infinity. It was not a ship's memorial, it was a species' graveyard. She stopped at the end of the hall, where a single chamber glowed faintly. The plaque read, Earth, Archive 01. Her heart stilled. Slowly, she placed her hand on the activation pad. The door slid open with a sigh, like the breath of an old god waking. Inside, a projection shimmered to life. Blue oceans. White clouds. Mountains covered in green. A sphere of breathtaking beauty spun slowly before her eyes. Earth, she whispered. It's real. The AI voice of the Atlas answered, calm and ancient, affirmative. Designation, Sol 3. Origin point of Terran civilization. Her throat tightened. But it's gone. The AI paused. Geographically, yes. Spiritually, undetermined, Lyra blinked. Spiritually? The chamber brightened and the projection shifted. Now she saw images, not data but memories. Children running in fields. A woman painting by candlelight. A soldier writing a letter before battle. Moments small and fragile, preserved like prayers. She felt her pulse race. You kept this? Humanity required something to return to, said the AI, not a planet. A purpose, suddenly, a flicker interrupted the projection. A hidden sequence revealed itself. a recorded log encrypted under the designation Project Prometheus. A voice, male, steady, unmistakably human, filled the air. If you're hearing this, then we failed to save our home, but maybe, just maybe, we bought the time you needed to find your own. Lyra froze. The voice was older but familiar. She had heard it before, in another tone, another time. Captain Hale. The recording continued. They'll tell you we vanished. They'll call us myths, but that's fine. Myths have power. Because one day someone will go looking for the truth. And when they find this message, they'll remember. We didn't die in the dark. We lit the fire that would guide you home. The image faded, leaving her alone in the quiet hum of history. Tears slipped down her cheeks unbidden. You knew, she whispered to herself. You knew this was here. Later, Lyra found Hale standing in the observation deck watching the Helian remnants burn across the horizon. She approached quietly. You recorded it, didn't you? That message he didn't turn, a long time ago. Why hide it? He sighed. Because belief isn't given. It's earned. If they found it too early, they'd worship us as gods. If too late, they'd forget we ever existed. He turned, eyes shadowed but bright. I needed someone like you to find it at the right time. Lyra frowned. Why me? Hale smiled faintly. Because you didn't believe in us. You questioned. That's how truth survives. They stood in silence, the stars reflecting on the viewport like candlelight. Finally, she asked, Captain, why fight so hard for a galaxy that forgot you? He looked out again, voice low. Because forgetting doesn't change what's worth fighting for. In that moment, Lyra realized something profound. Humanity hadn't returned to reclaim dominance. They'd returned to remind creation that life itself, every act of kindness, faith, or defiance was sacred. The Atlas wasn't a warship. It was a testament. Hours later, in the council chambers of Velthar Prime, the Republic leaders met again, this time with the footage of Earth's archive in hand. Chancellor Merrick played it once, twice, then a third time, unable to speak. Finally, he said, If this is true, if they preserved their own extinction just to warn us, Counselor Rathan finished softly, then they're not conquerors. They're witnesses. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. In temples, priests of 1,000 faiths replayed Hale's final words. In mining colonies, workers shared recordings of the Atlas's stand at Helion. In schools, children began to draw Earth, a blue world no one had ever seen. Something was happening. Something vast and unseen. Hope was mutating. Back aboard the Atlas, Lyra joined Hale at the central command dome. The ship's AI spoke again, unprompted. Incoming signal, multiple Republic fleets en route. Not hostile. Lyra raised an eyebrow. They're coming to arrest you? Hale chuckled. Or to ask for help. He studied the starlight beyond, voice quiet. They're scared. Good. Fear means they still care what happens next. Lyra turned to him. Do you really believe humanity was meant to come back? He nodded once. I think someone wanted us to. We just took the long way home, she smiled faintly. You sound like a priest. Never was one, he said. But when you've seen enough void, you start hoping there's more to it than chaos. He gestured toward the stars. All this energy order balance, it's not random. Not possible. Lyra looked at him quietly. You think it's God? He shrugged. Maybe not by any name we remember. But something wanted light to exist, and that's enough for me. The AI's voice interrupted softly. Captain, Helion Gate is stabilizing. Foldspace disturbances have ceased. Hale nodded. Good. For now we've earned some peace. He turned to Lyra. But don't mistake calm for safety. The Vorgal will return, and when they do, the Republic will have to decide whether it stands united. She stared at him. And humanity, he smiled, will be right where we've always been, between the dark and the ones who still believe there's something worth saving. That night, Lyra walked alone through the observation deck. Below her, the stars shimmered like tears frozen in space. She whispered softly, to no one and to everything. Maybe we didn't just find humanity. Maybe we found what made them human. For a heartbeat, the starlight seemed to pulse, warm, living, and though she couldn't explain it, she felt something vast and gentle watching back. Fear spreads faster than truth. As factions within the Republic clash over whether to trust the humans, propaganda turns the Atlas into a symbol and a target. Lyra must decide whether to stand with Hale or betray him to save her people. The truth is never destroyed by lies, only delayed by fear. The echoes of Helion Gate still lingered through the stars. Wreckage drifted like silver ghosts across the void, a graveyard caught between triumph and aftermath. But in the heart of the New Republic, the real battle had just begun. On Velthar Prime, the Senate of Concord convened beneath its crystalline dome once again. Outside, millions gathered, chanting and shouting, some waving banners that read, "Welcome the Terrans," others burning effigies of the Dreadnought Atlas. Fear was contagious, and fear was winning. Chancellor Merrick stood before the assembled delegates, his tone grave but sharp. "We have all seen what they can do. One Terran ship held off the Vorgal for hours. Imagine what a fleet could do. To us." Councillor Rethan rose immediately. "Or for us. Don't twist it, Merrick. You saw the same transmissions I did. They saved Helion Gate." Merrick's tendrils curled. "And who brought the Vorgal there to begin with?" Murmurs swept the chamber. Rethan slammed his hand on the table. "You're playing politics while extinction breathes down our necks." Merrick's reply was cold. "I'm protecting our sovereignty. You'd hand our defense to myths wearing human faces." The council erupted into argument, but somewhere deep inside, everyone knew the truth. The return of humanity had cracked the Republic open. Aboard the Atlas, Captain Hale watched the chaos unfold through intercepted holo broadcasts. The alien media dissected his every action. Hero, villain, prophet, war criminal. He didn't react. Lyra Venn entered the command deck quietly, a datapad in her hand. "They're calling for an emergency session. Some factions want you tried for war crimes." He smirked faintly. "War crimes? For saving them?" "Perception is power, Captain," she said softly. "And right now they're afraid of you." He turned to face her, calm as ever. "Good. Fear is honest. It means they haven't learned to lie to themselves yet." Lyra frowned. "You think this is how peace starts?" "By scaring them?" "No," Hale said. "But peace doesn't start with comfort either. It starts when someone finally tells the truth." That night, Hale walked alone through the Atlas's memorial corridor. He stopped before a hollow of earth. Glowing faintly in the dim light, he whispered, "We came back for hope. And they call it invasion." The AI's voice spoke softly, almost like a companion. "Humans have always been misunderstood. Creation fears what it cannot control." He smiled tiredly. "Maybe that's what faith really is. Trusting that you're doing what's right, even when no one understands." In the Republic capital, meanwhile, propaganda began spreading. Images of Terran warships filled the holonets, each captioned with words like "Return of the Extinct," "Artificial Gods," or "Human Plague Reborn." And yet, on the outer colonies, the opposite happened. Miners, traders, engineers all whispered new prayers. The Atlas watches. Children carved Terran emblems onto their toys. Ships painted INs across their hulls in quiet rebellion. Humanity had become a belief system. In her quarters aboard the Atlas, Lyra sat staring at a message glowing on her datapad. It was from Chancellor Merrick, encrypted. "Urgent Archivist Venn, we can no longer trust the Terran captain. His influence grows with every broadcast. You must send us his navigation core. Quietly. Do this, and you will save the Republic from a second extinction." Her hands trembled. They wanted her to betray Hale. She looked up at the viewport. Outside, the Atlas drifted above the Republic's border worlds, massive, scarred, majestic. The ship wasn't just metal and engines anymore. It was a symbol, a living myth. Her conscience churned. She found Hale later in the observation bay, still studying the damaged systems of Helion Gate. His profile was lit by faint starlight. "Hale," she began, "if the Republic turns on you, what will you do?" He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was almost gentle. "I'll do what we've always done, stand our ground. And if they fire on you," he smiled faintly, "then they'll learn what the Atlas was built for." Lyra's voice shook. "You can't fight everyone." He turned to her then, eyes calm but burning with conviction. "No, but I can fight for something. That's what makes us human." That night, she couldn't sleep. Her thoughts circled endlessly. The Chancellor's message, Hale's words, the memory of Earth. She walked the Atlas's silent corridors, listening to the hum of its ancient engines like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Finally, she whispered into the empty air, God, if you're really there, tell me what's right. No answer came, but somewhere deep in the ship, the old Terran hymn system crackled to life, static resolving into a soft, wordless melody, something human, something real. And Lyra understood. Some truths don't come as words, they come as peace. At dawn cycle, the Atlas detected Republic ships approaching, hundreds of them, forming a blockade. Incoming transmission, the AI reported. Chancellor Merrick's face appeared on the holo. Captain Hale, by order of the Republic Council, you are hereby detained under Article 9, unrestricted technological threat. Stand down your weapons and surrender the Atlas. Hale's voice was calm. And if I refuse? Merrick's eyes hardened. Then you'll be fired upon. A long silence filled the bridge. Finally, Hale spoke. Then you've already chosen your enemy. The first plasma bolt struck moments later. It didn't pierce the Atlas's hull, but the shock reverberated through the decks. Lyra stumbled, gripping the console. They're actually attacking! Hale's jaw tightened. Don't return fire. Not yet. Not yet. They'll destroy you. He turned to her. If I fire now, they'll prove themselves right. Let them see what restraint looks like. For 5 endless minutes, the Atlas endured the barrage in silence, shields glowing, hull burning. Then, the firing stopped. The comm crackled, a voice, alien, desperate, broke through. Chancellor Merrick, cease fire. This is Admiral Rethan of the Outer Colonies. You attacked the only thing keeping the Vorgal at bay. Another voice joined, female, furious. My ships will not turn their guns on heroes. Fleet identification markers began shifting. Half the Republic Navy turning red for Merrick, the other half blue for Hale. The Republic had split. From the observation bay, Lyra watched the two fleets aim at each other across the void. Brother against brother. Believer against skeptic. Hale stood beside her, silent. It's starting again, isn't it? She whispered. Another war. He nodded slowly. Civilization's oldest habit. Then why fight for them? He smiled, sad but certain. Because faith isn't about who deserves saving. It's about saving them anyway. Outside, engines roared to life all across the system. Republic ships turned to face one another. The darkness of the void lit up with the glow of pending annihilation, and between them, motionless and immense, floated one human ship, a relic of faith, defiance, and impossible hope. The UNS Atlas. Lyra turned to Hale. If you start this war, it'll never end. He looked at her, eyes clear as glass. Then maybe it's time someone finished what history never could. The stars outside began to shift, thousands of tiny suns flickering in eerie rhythm. The Vorgal had returned, watching, waiting, and for the first time, Lyra understood. The galaxy wasn't just divided by fear of humans. It was being tested by what humans had always stood for, choice. Empires fall, faith endures. Old Terran proverb engraved on the hull of the UNS Atlas. The galaxy trembled on the edge of civil war. The Republic of Concord, once a beacon of unity, now stood split in two. Half followed Chancellor Merrick, who declared humanity a threat to existence. Half followed Admiral Rethan, who called them saviors reborn. And between them, one ship floated in silence. The UNS Atlas, her crew watched as both fleets filled the void like two armies of light preparing to consume the dark. Every star in the Helion sector bore witness. Power grid stable, reported Lieutenant Sorev. Weapons offline. Per your orders. Captain Hale stood at the command platform, hands clasped behind his back. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between prayer and defiance. Let them fire first, he said quietly. Truth needs its martyrs. Lyra Ven stepped closer. Voice low but firm. They already see you as one. Hale, don't give them your blood to prove it. He glanced at her, eyes calm, almost kind. It's not my blood they're afraid of. Lyra, it's what it means. On the Republic homeworld Velthar Prime, chaos ruled the streets. Protests ignited into riots. Temples were burned, embassies stormed, 2 banners tore the city apart. Faith in the Atlas. Purity for the Republic. In the Senate Hall, Merrick's voice thundered through emergency broadcasts. Humanity is not divine. They are weapons, relics of extinction. And like all weapons, they will turn on their makers. But far from the capital, Admiral Rethan's message countered, if weapons they are, then let them be wielded by hope, not fear. Every colony, every ship, every citizen was forced to choose. And as the galaxy chose, the Vorgel listened, ancient predators feeding on the static of chaos. Deep beyond the Helion Gate, where light itself struggled to survive, Vorgel hive worlds awakened. They had been quiet since the Battle of Helion Gate, rebuilding, adapting, waiting. Now, their consciousness in a single vast neural web pulsed with one thought. The prey divides itself, now. Millions of bioships stirred from hibernation, dark as obsidian and alive with hunger, the void filled with their silent movement, a storm that consumed stars. The war of belief had drawn the predator back. Aboard the Atlas, Lyra's datapad blinked, another encrypted message, this time from Admiral Rethan. Captain Hale, the Vorgel are on approach. Merrick will not stand down. We need the Atlas now. Join me and we'll unite what's left of the fleet. Hale studied the message, silent. Lyra waited, anxious. This is it, Hale. You can still turn the tide. He didn't answer immediately. Finally, he whispered. Rethan's right about one thing. Lyra frowned. Which is? He looked up, eyes burning with quiet fire. The galaxy doesn't need peace. It needs purpose. He turned to his bridge crew. Helm, set course for the Rethan line. All power to the drives. The Atlas roared to life, ancient engines flaring blue-white. Part thunder, part hymn, a legend was moving. Hours later, the Atlas arrived at the Rethan line and where 2 armadas faced off like titans across a battlefield of dead worlds. Republic. Loyalists under Merrick numbered 5,000. Ships Rethan's rebels had barely half that, and above them both, descending like night itself, the Vorgel swarm. For one suspended moment, the 3 forces hung in silence, faith, fear, hunger. Then all hell broke loose. The void erupted into chaos. Vorgal bioships tore through formation lines, their black tendrils slicing through hulls like silk. Republic destroyers fired at both enemies. Blinded by confusion and pride, Rethan's fleet fought to hold the line, but they were being overwhelmed. And then, a shadow moved through the storm. The Atlas, her cannons unfolded, gleaming like the hands of a forgotten god. Target the swarm leaders, Hale ordered. Ignore Republic fire. Focus on what matters. Plasma arcs lit the darkness as the Atlas fired, each blast punching holes through the living swarm. Vorgel vessels, disintegrated under the weight of Terran firepower unseen for centuries. Republic ships paused, stunned. Even Merrick's command vessels hesitated. Lyra watched the scanners. They're slowing fire on us. Hale nodded. Good. Let them remember what mercy looks like. Hours into battle, Merrick's flagship Ascendant light transmitted directly to the Atlas. Merrick's face appeared, bloodied, desperate, terrified. Captain Hale, you were right. We cannot hold them. The Vorgel, they're not after our fleets. They're after you, Hale's eyes narrowed. Explain. Their neural frequencies, they're echoing yours. Your ship's core. They've adapted to Terran code. Lyra gasped. They're learning from us? Hale's jaw set. They're trying to erase the memory of us. He turned to his crew. All power to the main array. I want the core linked to the graviton pulse. Lyra stepped forward, alarmed. That'll overload the reactor. You'll vaporize half the fleet. He smiled faintly. Half a fleet for the survival of all life. Seems like fair math. She grabbed his arm. Hale, don't do this. We need you. He looked at her with something that wasn't command but care. You don't need me, Lyra. You need what we stood for. Then, softly, faith isn't surviving the impossible. It's choosing to believe even when survival isn't guaranteed. The Atlas's core roared to life. Every console glowed blinding white. Alarm screamed across the ship. The gravitational pulse built within the Terran reactor, an ancient doomsday sequence once meant to terraform stars. Now, it would burn the swarm, Lyra's voice broke through the static. "Hale, reactor at critical!" "Hold the charge," he ordered. Outside, Vorgel ships swarmed closer, thousands upon thousands. Devouring the light, Hale raised his head toward the viewport, eyes locked on the stars. For Earth. For everything that ever dared to hope. He slammed the activation key. The Atlas erupted, a sphere of white fire expanded across the void. Pure energy, forged from human will and the last technology of a forgotten age. The pulse tore through the Vorgel swarm, burning their neural web to silence. Every ship, Merrick's, Rethan's, every vessel in the sector, went dark as the wave washed over them. And when the light faded, the Vorgol were gone. The Atlas floated, cracked, silent, its hull split. Its engines dark, no transmissions, no voice. Just the echo of the hymn system, still whispering faintly through the static. Empires fall, faith endures. Weeks later, survivors gathered over the charred remains of Helion Gate. The Republic had no chancellor now. Rethan's forces were rebuilding what they could. And Lyra Venn stood alone on the bridge of the Atlas, now a drifting monument. She placed her hand on the cracked console and whispered, "You were right, Hale. The galaxy didn't need peace, it needed purpose." Outside, lights blinked faintly, beacons one by one. From distant systems, colonies across the stars transmitting one signal: Atlas lives. The legend of humanity had become more than myth. It had become faith itself. They said the stars forget, but some lights never go out. From the reclamation hymn discovered in the ruins of the UNS Atlas, the galaxy had changed. The new concordant union, born from the ashes of the Republic War, stretched across 200 systems. Its citizens lived beneath banners woven not from fear or politics, but from one shared creed: empires fall, faith endures. And yet amid this fragile peace, one question still burned like a distant star. What happened to the humans? No one truly knew. Some said they ascended beyond the physical plane. Some whispered that they slept within the heart of a dying sun. Others believed they became one with the light itself. But among historians, scientists, and wanderers, there were still those who searched. And one of them bore a familiar name. Lyra Venn II, great-granddaughter of the original archivist, stepped onto the derelict hull of the UNS Atlas. The ship had been found adrift on the edge of the Chiron expanse, exactly 112 years after it vanished. Time had not destroyed it. Time had preserved it. The Atlas was now a tomb of metal and silence, its massive frame half-fused with crystallized energy from the ancient graviton pulse. It hummed faintly, as if still dreaming. Her boots clanged softly as she entered the old bridge. Dust floated like ghosts in the beam of her torch. The nameplate above the command chair was still legible. Cap. Adrian Hale, she touched the cold metal, whispering, "They said you died to save us." The ship answered with static, faint but deliberate. And then, a voice. "We didn't die," it said. "We waited." Lyra froze, heart racing. The voice was ancient, deep, woven through 1,000 frequencies. She turned to her scanner. Source? No signal, no beacon. The transmission was coming from the ship itself. "You carry her name," the voice continued. "Lyra Venn, archivist, the one who believed." She swallowed hard. "I'm her descendant. Then you carry her promise." The bridge lights flickered. Screens that hadn't worked in a century glowed softly. And in the holographic core, a figure began to form. A man in a torn Terran uniform, fading in and out like light through fog. Captain Adrian Hale. Lyra stumbled back, awe overtaking fear. "Impossible. You can't be alive." The hologram smiled faintly. "Alive? No. Not as you know it. But consciousness, it leaves fingerprints. We left ours here." She approached, voice trembling. "Why? Why leave yourselves behind?" Hale's gaze turned to the stars beyond the cracked viewport. "Because humanity isn't a species. It's a story, And stories only die when no one remembers. He turned back to her. You stand here because your ancestors refused to forget. The hologram shifted, showing waves of data, coordinates, schematics, language fragments. These are the seeds, he said. Fragments of our legacy. The Atlas Project. Lyra frowned. Legacy of what? Of hope, he said simply. We learned something before the end, that the universe isn't indifferent. It's listening, waiting for voices that believe. He looked almost wistful. Every time someone looks at the stars and feels something, wonder, love, purpose, they speak to it. That's faith. That's creation continuing. Lyra hesitated. My people stopped praying long ago. They said the gods were myths, like you. Hale's expression softened. Then maybe that's the same thing. She blinked. What do you mean? A myth, he said, isn't false. It's just truth remembered in the wrong language. He looked down, voice quiet but full of conviction. We called him God. You might call it the source. Others, the light. But when you've seen death and beauty in the same breath, you stop thinking it's all accident. Lyra felt something stir within her, an echo of memory older than her blood. You really believed? He smiled faintly. No, I knew. The hologram pulsed once more, revealing an ancient map, stars forming constellations unknown to her. These coordinates, he said, lead to Eden's Wake, humanity's final refuge. We hid it beyond the fold, protected by the same code that powers the ship. Lyra's eyes widened. You mean there are survivors? Not as you expect, Hale said. But what we left there can make your kind more than you were. Not human, not alien, something new. He paused, his image flickering. That's the legacy of humanity. Not dominance, not conquest. Creation. The message began to fade. The power core of the Atlas was dying. Lyra pressed her hand to the console. I'll go, Captain. I'll find Eden's Wake. He looked at her, that same faint smile from the old recordings. Then humanity never truly left. His final words echoed through the bridge. Tell them that we believed for them until they could believe again. And then the light faded. The bridge went dark. Weeks later, the Union fleet gathered around the silent hulk of the Atlas. Lyra stood before the High Council, new leaders, younger, less afraid. She presented Hale's coordinates, his words, and his faith. Many dismissed it as romantic fantasy, but many more listened. A joint expedition was formed, dozens of races united by something deeper than curiosity. They called it the Pilgrimage of Light, and leading it, aboard a rebuilt vessel christened Atlas II, stood Lyra Venn. As the fleet prepared to enter the fold, Lyra stood at the viewing deck staring into the endless dark. She remembered Hale's words. She remembered the voice that said, "Faith isn't surviving the impossible. It's believing despite it." And then softly, she whispered to the stars, "If you're out there, thank you." At that moment, sensors detected something, a flicker deep in the fold. Not a ship, not an echo. A signal, the same phrase, repeating endlessly in ancient Terran code. Atlas lives. Centuries later, pilgrims would travel to that region of space to see the eternal beacon, a constant light burning within the fold, unexplainable, unending. They called it the soul of humanity. Children would look up at the night sky and ask, "Who lit it?" And their elders would smile, whispering the answer passed down through generations, the ones who believed first, so that we could believe forever.